Boom, bang, bang. It's Tuesday night, 7:15 p.m., and we've already got people flowing into the live chat. Hello, how are you? Happy Tuesday. I hope you're doing well. K and MJ squared is dropping those comments because we are live. And if you drop your comments in the comment section, I can display them on screen and we can have fun. It's cool to be able to acknowledge the chats as they go along. K and MJ squared asks, "What are we smoking on tonight?" Oh, some homegrown. But we're smoking and sipping tonight. We've got the Can Trip 50 milligram orange soda, which I fucking love. You can get these at drinkcantrip.com/Cole memo for 15. You get 15% off. 15% of that goes back to me. So if you're looking for a way to support the show and get high legally, you hear the bubbles. That's how you do it. And I know I just said 50 milligrams, and some of you may have been like, whoa. They also offer low dose, mid range, and high dose options. They've even got a spirit that you can like mix into other drinks. It's like 100 milligrams a bottle. Again, kind of a kiss on the cheek for me, but for others, that's like we're talking big money, right? So, smoking on some homegrown and sipping on some Cantrip. Once again, you can get that for 15% off. drinkcantrip.com/Cole memo. 15% of that goes back to me, which I will use to buy more Cantrip. So that's what we're smoking on. Smoking Pots and Pants says, "Happy Tuesday, folks. This is definitely my favorite part of Tuesdays. Thank you for tuning in." Some cat on the internet says, "Greeting, fellow cannabinoids." So, folks, if you haven't gathered it already, I'm reading comments aloud because we are live for another episode of the Cole Memo tonight. I'll be joined by a surprise guest, a journalist you might recognize, to break down Illinois governor's the Illinois governor, also known as Governor J.B. Pritzker, his upcoming budget address, what we can expect from the new legislative session. I also plan to discuss the recently vetoed hemp ban in Chicago, media coverage of cannabis policy, and more. And throughout the show, we are taking callers. You can call in soon at colememo.com/live. No video required. You can stay anonymous if you want to share your perspective. If you have a disagreement or something to add, that's your chance to literally be a part of this broadcast. You can also, as I've already shown, drop your comments below. We may put them on screen and acknowledge them as I have so far. Let's see. KNMJ squared says they're waiting for their brownie to kick in while they make dinner. They're about to take a dab. And Genetic Memory Farm says, "If you or anyone is interested, Lawful Masses just released an analysis of the new DMCA reading, which will lightly tighten fair use rules, making news reporting and analysis even more difficult." That's great to hear as we transition into another live broadcast of the show. In case you missed the memo, that's a joke, by the way. In case you missed the memo, I go live every Tuesday at 7:15 p.m. So, and that's unless announced otherwise. So we're live every Tuesday, 7:15 p.m., unless I let you know otherwise. I still plan to drop bonus or pre-recorded episodes here and there, like I did this week at colememo.com/Patreon. If you'd like to become a patron, it just costs $3 a month to support the show, and you get early access to content as I release it. I'll just say I'm working on a really interesting story regarding a home grower, a legal home grower here in the state of Illinois. They had their home raided, their home grow equipment stolen, and a lot of other unfortunate things happened. I've been working on this story for a while. I've been interviewing them. I've been getting body cam footage of the raid to share with you all. Today, I requested transcript footage that costs $95. That's just to give you a little bit of a peek into what this work can cost. That's not counting in the travel time I had to go to the court case to this person's house to cover it. Also, the distribution fees involved with getting this media to you, the equipment fees to capture the media that I'm presenting to you. And I say this all to say that if you can support me at colememo.com/Patreon, it'd be greatly appreciated. colememo.com/support is another way to support financially. If you can't do that, though, the best way to do it is to like, subscribe, share with your friends, and drop a comment. Once again, folks, 7:15 p.m. every Tuesday. That's the time slot for
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
All right, I'm back because somebody had a question. Just curious. I'll have to get back to you on this. How much of a cut does Patreon take? It's a flat free. I can't speak. I don't remember the total right now, but I'll let you know. I do know that they take a small fee, just like YouTube does. I've had a few people drop super chats, which you can do. You can do it right now. If you don't want to do it on Patreon, you can do a super chat. But it seems like all of these people take a chunk. Even if you contribute at colememo.com/support, I can't remember who processes the payments for me right now. It's you'd know them if you heard them, but everybody takes a chunk. They all take a chunk. So it is what it is. We're gonna start off with a piece from Crane's Chicago right here in this episode of
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo. The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chung, and you're listening and watching the Cole Memo.
As somebody who is obsessed with covering Illinois cannabis policy, I get so excited when I see other outlets covering the subject. And lately, I've been seeing a lot of that, which is not something, honestly, I've been seeing over the last few years. So anytime I see it, I get super excited. And I wanted to share some of the things that have caught my eye. I think it's notable that a lot of the reporting I've seen has been questioning the success of Illinois cannabis policy. For example, this headline from the Chicago Reporter: 6 years in, has Illinois cannabis equity law delivered? This headline from the same author at the Chicago Reporter: what Illinois got wrong about legal weed? The Chicago Tribune, which you can't see the headline because they've got a paywall, but I'll read it for you. Illinois cannabis sales revenue falls as hemp and other states cut into prices for the struggling industry. You've got this headline from Chicago Business. That's Crane's. Illinois said it was all in on cannabis equity. Here's where it stands on that promise. You've got some commentary from Scott Redman in Crane's Chicago Business, who has been on this show in the past. The headline: Illinois' costly and complex cannabis regulation law needs a significant overhaul. You also have this article from Crane's Chicago Business author John Pletz saying the Illinois cannabis boom cools as prices drop and growth slows. Sort of unrelated, but still interesting. Illinois cannabis companies, 9 of them, were accused of price fixing and lawsuit by the Ohio Attorney General. And, a lot of the coverage tends to focus on industry and the success or failure of it, but credit where credit is due. Capital News Illinois and other outlets are reporting on the fact that even though marijuana is legal in Illinois, clearing old criminal records still remains a challenge. So I got to give some credit to outlets that are still covering what I think is the most important subject with regard to legalization. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as this segment unfolds. But like I say, a lot of the reporting that you'll see talks about the business side of it. What did we get wrong with regard to the business side of it? And it's something I talk about on the show a lot. And I think it's interesting. For example, I think it's interesting that the entire hemp debate, if you will, seems to be as contentious as it is because of the shortcomings of the Illinois cannabis law. And I'm not the only person that has said this. The Speaker of the House Emmanuel Chris Welch has said exactly this. Most recently, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson vetoed a ban on hemp, saying that many people operating in the space are entrepreneurs who are shut out of the expensive cannabis licensing process and turn to federally legal hemp as a pathway into the marketplace. He says we cannot claim to support equitable economic development while advancing policies that concentrate the market in the hands of a few large entities. Our responsibility is to pass thoughtful regulation, not to legislate entire segments of neighborhood business corridors out of existence. I think it's so interesting how this conversation manifests itself in so many different ways. And so, like I say, I wanted to take a moment to sort of play some clips from a podcast from Crane Chicago Business. Actually, one of the reporters that I flashed some articles on screen for, his name is John Schroyer. And like I said, I'm going to play some clips. We're going to talk about, the subject that, like I said, which is near and dear to my heart, the continued criminalization of cannabis. So, like I said, props to Capital News Illinois for this headline. I love that people are covering this subject. Okay, let's play the first clip. Here it is.
Of course. So catch me up. I'm thinking back to the summer of 2019 when Governor J.B. Pritzker signed into law what was described as this very equity-centric marijuana legalization bill.
Legalization of adult use cannabis brings an important and overdue change to our state, and it's the right thing to do. Black and white people tend to use cannabis at the same rates, but black people are far more likely to be arrested for possession.
And there were so many provisions in that, and it had this stated goal of diversifying the marijuana market in Illinois. How has all of that played out in practice?
I think not as well as a lot of the lawmakers would have hoped. It's kind of the short version of that. It's definitely benefited a good number of entrepreneurs, especially minorities who are interested in getting into the marijuana trade. There are. I'm blanking off the top of my head on the numbers at the moment, but at least a couple of hundred of social equity marijuana businesses that are operational in Illinois. The problem, the criticism really is that is far short of kind of what lawmakers, what policymakers had intended or hoped for. And the reality is that only really about half of the business licenses that were issued to various different folks under the social equity program have managed to open for business thus far to date. So about half of those business licenses have just simply gone unused. And even a lot of the folks who did get a dispensary permit or a craft grow permit or some other kind of business license through the social equity program, a lot of them report zero profits essentially thus far. And this is almost 6 years after a lot of these permits have been issued. It's really been falling short of what the original goals were for the program.
Yeah, I'm reminded of in your reporting, you noted somebody who was talking about still keeping a day job because there's just so much debt attached to his business and it hasn't turned a profit yet. Opening the retail or cultivation center is kind of one metric. It seems difficult to measure the other social equity goals exactly.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is really tough. Just in terms of even coming up with a metric for measuring success with a program like this, because you could definitely argue, and there were several sources that I spoke to who did make that argument that, even if half of the licenses were open, that is a decent measure of success for a public policy program like this. It's really kind of a big question mark for a lot of different stakeholders, I would argue, in terms of whether or not the Illinois program has been a success, or if it's been a failure, or if it's been kind of somewhere in between. And most of the folks that I spoke with agreed that it was kind of somewhere in between, a little bit of a mixed bag. That was a phrase that came up quite commonly. But the reality is there are just still, to this day, a lot of hurdles for even the folks who manage to open social equity dispensaries or other types of companies to being profitable, like you just mentioned. And in terms of, you know, not just one, but there were several sources that I spoke to who reported being forced to maintain their day jobs just to be able to pay their bills because their dispensaries or other types of companies have not turned any kind of profit.
No profits, zero profits 6 years after permits were issued. Half of the business licenses go unused. I find all of this chatter to be very interesting. And when they talk about the original goals, the metrics of success, I definitely have some thoughts here. And to expound upon those thoughts, I'm going to go over to thecolememo.com. It's full screen right now for those of you that are watching the podcast. Let's set the stage like this. Let's just play back that quote from Governor Pritzker.
And it's the right thing to do. Black and white people tend to use cannabis at the same rates, but black people are far more likely to be arrested for possession.
Okay, let's bring back up thecolememo.com. We're looking at one of the latest articles that I wrote, which is headlined High Level Overview of Illinois Cannabis Reports for 2025, Part 1. I don't ever know if I'll get around to writing another part to this. Honestly, I've been so busy. But anyways, just to cut to the chase, what we've seen and what data has shown, first of all, the Chicago Tribune reported on this back in the day. We'll cover that here in just a moment. But then the University of Illinois started studying this trend. I'm going to make this map bigger. And what you're seeing is that these are where arrests happen, the blue line, the blue dots, and the triangles are where dispensaries are. And what you'll notice is the arrests are happening where dispensaries aren't, which just so happens to be the same exact areas that have always borne the brunt of the war on drugs. In other words, nothing has changed really since legalization. And in fact, this year was the first year, sorry, I should say last year, 2025, was the first year that we saw a year-over-year increase in arrests for cannabis possession. And again, I'm not going to play the clip again, but he was saying that, you know, even though white and black people use at the same rate, there's a disproportionate or marginalized effect. Sorry, what I mean to say is that even though everybody uses drugs at the same rate, the rate of enforcement is not equivalent. And maybe I didn't need to spell that out, but I just wanted to say that despite legalization, that still goes on. And I will be playing a clip from a University of Illinois researcher who actually published some of the data that we're looking at on screen right now. This clip is from my mini documentary that I produced on the subject of Illinois cannabis legalization. It's a short presentation that details how I felt we fell short of achieving meaningful reform. There's specifically a segment on this topic, which I felt was appropriate to play at this time. Here it is.
The fact that arrests are still happening, that does point to the fact, and you looked at this as well, the illicit market remains strong. And a lot of people, different depending on the demographic, but a lot of people are still turning to that illegal market to obtain their cannabis, right?
That's correct. The Tribune did a nice story a couple years back. Their angle on this was that the arrests in Chicago were occurring in places where there weren't dispensaries. So we took another look at that again. We updated that information and found that that's still the case. And that suggests that one reason that people turn to the illegal market is that it's just more convenient for them. They don't have a dispensary near where they live. And unfortunately, at least that's true in Chicago, the lack of dispensaries happens to be in neighborhoods that are primarily ethnic minorities and poorer neighborhoods. That's still a concerning issue. And one of the criticisms of Illinois' tax act, the Cannabis Tax Act, is that the taxes are so high that cannabis is more expensive to get in a dispensary, even if you have one convenient to you. And so it's actually just cheaper to go and buy it from your local dealer who you may have been buying it from for years. And so we found that those are several of the reasons that people continue to buy illegally: convenience, price, and having a trusted dealer that they've used for a long time.
Once again, you can check out that full presentation at colememo.com/minidoc. And like I say, I just found that super notable and wanted to share it. You know, if we're looking for a metric of success, maybe we start with that one, the one that we like all agreed that was wrong, you know, that fact. It'd be nice if maybe we use that as a metric of success And it'd be nice if we saw, enforcement fall altogether. I always like to say, and now we're going to pull up the Illinois cannabis law before we transition to the next segment here. I'm looking up the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. It's fun, right? Doesn't that sound like a fun thing to look into? And I'll show you how I do this. I'm on the Illinois General Assembly website. I'll make the screen big here. So we're looking at the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. I'm going to click View Entire Act. And literally the first words in the law are, in the interest of allowing law enforcement to focus on violent and property crime, the General Assembly finds and declares that the use of cannabis should be legal for persons 21 years of age or older and should be taxed in a manner similar to alcohol. That's in the interest of allowing law enforcement to focus on violent and property crime. Again, I say, if we're looking for a metric of success, perhaps it would be giving law enforcement the capacity to focus on violent and property crime. And if we have stats that indicate that they're not doing that, perhaps we would use that as a metric of success, to try to change policy. I don't know. These are just ideas that I'm coming up with. I want to know what you all think as we continue to listen through this podcast episode from Crane's Chicago. Here is the next clip that caught my attention.
Yeah, and it seems like at the beginning there was so much conversation around, undoing damage done by the so-called war on drugs that, hey, this will make people.
And I just want to say this, and I'm going to restart that clip. What she just said is perfect. Everybody, when they talked about legalization, leading up to legalization here in Illinois, that all of the discussion was we need to undo the harm caused by the war on drugs. Well, the war on drugs, specifically with regard to cannabis, is still alive and well here in the state of Illinois. So I ask, how are we going to right the wrongs of the war on drugs if the war on drugs continues?
Yeah, and it seems like at the beginning there was so much conversation around, undoing damage done by the so-called war on drugs that, hey, this will make people whole who are from communities who suffered or themselves, were in the legal system as a result of it. And then we're hearing from, in your reporting, you noted that there's some folks that are like, well, sure, but also I haven't, gotten that business up and running yet. So it seems like here's this promise of building generational wealth, and, we're not seeing that so much.
Yeah, and in fact, a lot of times it's even the reverse, where a lot of folks that I've spoken to, or social equity entrepreneurs, say it's actually the opposite in terms of the program like this creating generational debt as opposed to generational wealth, because a lot of folks were really attracted by this promise of social equity, basically, and they pour a lot of entrepreneurs tap themselves out financially and put literally everything they had into starting up some of these cannabis businesses, only to essentially find out that it was basically for nothing.
Yeah. One person that you quoted in your reporting I thought was interesting, who was kind of bemoaning that he didn't flip his permit and sell that for profit earlier, but the idea of like hanging on to it has kind of bitten him.
Yeah, and that was actually something I heard from several sources in the reporting process, was that there were a couple different people who told me that the only real winners, quote unquote, were people who sold their licenses almost immediately upon winning them, back in whether it was 2019 or 2020, or there were a couple different years that they went through the actual licensing, but that was very real when back when the program first started. Especially the dispensary permits were in very high demand, and they were being sold on the secondary market for $4, $5, $6 million. Is what I've heard, and that's pretty undisputed. I mean, most of the permit winners said today if they tried to sell their licenses, they probably would not be able to find a single buyer, let alone for several $1 million.
When you speak with the Illinois Cannabis Regulation Oversight Office and other,
and we will get back to that part of the clip here in just a moment, the idea that this will make people whole, I feel like that is in many ways part of the problem. Like, first of all, the state shouldn't have made that promise. Second of all, the licensees that bought that promise should sue the state of Illinois to get all their money back and some. for the trouble. The whole idea, though, that this will make people whole, I think, like I said, is part of the problem. And I think it makes it so that people are less likely to focus on what I've been trying to focus on, which is the continued criminalization of cannabis. There's all this discussion. Like I said, most of the reporting is on the business woes. Oh, why do we have to have a vault for our cannabis? It's like, because you're still kind of the whole foundation for this law is basically trying to preserve prohibition era pricing by limiting and over regulating the cannabis plant. That's it's the foundation of the problem. And until we address criminalization, the root and the whole like modus operandi of this entire movement, I don't even know if I used that term correctly. Google me, folks. That we have always, that's what this movement has always been about, criminalization. And so when we start to lose track of that, that's when these issues start popping up. The only reason cannabis is regulated the way that it is because we have not invested fully in ending the criminalization of cannabis. If everybody could grow their own, the stigma surrounding cannabis, I think, would be much lower. But of course, I'm talking about perfect world things. I know a lot of people criticize me for being a bit idealistic, and so I'm just acknowledging that right now. Let's hear what the regulators of the state think about the success of the cannabis program, lest I go on more rants. Here's the clip.
When you speak with the Illinois Cannabis Regulation Oversight Office and other regulators who are involved in this, do they feel that it's successful?
At least in part, yes. The regulatory agencies that oversee the industry, generally, they'll point to, the number of companies and licenses that are operational, which is definitely a fair point. There are well over 200 social equity business licenses that are operational. And so I think it's definitely fair to say that that is a measure of success. It's not like none of the social equity companies have gotten off the ground. There are definitely some that are doing business and they're working towards profitability, and fingers crossed, I wouldn't be surprised if at least some of them, do get to that level of actually making money at some point in the next few years. And that goes back to, some of the significant changes at the federal level, actually, that will probably help a lot of the marijuana industry become profitable once rescheduling is finished. But that's a whole other separate conversation. It's hard to judge, basically, is kind of the short answer. I kept coming back to that whole mixed bag phrase, essentially, because that's just really common in this sort of situation. It's like there are definitely a good number of successes, but there are also a good number of failures.
Yeah. So it sounds like some people view it as a mixed bag. Like I say, I get a little caught up in the whole criminalization thing. And, some things that critics of what I guess I say will point out, Cole, you can still be criminalized if you make bathtub moonshine or, traffic a bunch of alcohol or something like that. Like, okay. First of all, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like synthesizing or making dangerous chemicals. I'm talking about personal cultivation. And I understand how that can, unravel. But I don't know. With regard to the whole thing about how hard it is to open, to start getting involved in liquor and getting involved in alcohol and everything else. I'm not saying alcohol is the model. I'm not saying any business. I'm not saying there's really an economy maybe that's a good model here in the United States, except for maybe the restaurant industry, where we just allow open licensing and we accept the fact that 80% of restaurants will go out of business within the first 5 years. We accept that because we love giving people the opportunity to open up a restaurant and make us great food. I know I simplified that a bit, but I don't know. This is the way I look at cannabis. I don't think that we should not be using alcohol as a model. So if you're pointing out to me the criminalization of what criminalization continues with alcohol, it's like, okay, apples and oranges, that's wrong too. Like, I don't know. Again, though, apples and oranges is kind of a different conversation there. I just wanted to address some of my critics because I can hear them as I speak about this. Um, Very interesting to hear what the Illinois cannabis regulators think about the program. Obviously, they point towards their numbers. And as the reporter said, yes, there can be various metrics of success. I'm not saying that the metric of success that I've been harping on is the only one. I'm just saying I think it's the most important, perhaps. But we'll move on to the next clip that I found interesting in this this Crane's Daily Gist podcast. Here it is.
Since the legalization process in Illinois, other states in the Midwest have made some movement in that regard too. What role has that played in terms of the industry in Illinois, how it's maybe thrived or not accordingly?
Well, it's probably made it tougher just because that creates more competition, and specifically for consumers. So, and what a lot of cannabis companies in Illinois will tell pretty much anyone who asks them is that a lot of consumers from the Chicago area drive fairly regularly all the way to Michigan because Michigan has far cheaper marijuana available just over the border, particularly in a town called New Buffalo. And it's far cheaper than you could get anywhere in Illinois. Cannabis was also legalized in Missouri just a few years ago, and so there's a lot of folks from downstate also, maybe not the Chicago area, but downstate began driving across the state border to Missouri to buy cannabis there instead of purchasing in Illinois. And that was a major trend for at least a little while, and I'd be shocked if that was not also still going on. So that's been probably the biggest side effect of just kind of ongoing legalization, state by state by state. And we've got also the Kentucky medical marijuana market, which is launching pretty much as we speak. The only good thing, I guess, for Illinois is that Indiana, Iowa, and Wisconsin still don't have functional marijuana markets. Other than those, yeah, there's plenty of competition from Michigan and Missouri.
Yeah.
Definitely some competition from Michigan and Missouri. We talk about it on the show often. I know a lot of my listeners will go to what people call the M&M states, either Michigan or Missouri, wherever you're located in the state of Illinois, whatever's closest to seek a wider selection at a lower cost. Let's play the last clip that caught my attention from this episode of Crane's Daily Gist.
And in terms of what lawmakers are interested in doing.
Oh, by the way, in this clip, there's a dog barking in the background, and it's not mine. I'm guessing it's the reporter John Schroyer's dog. Just wanted to acknowledge that and also give you context that in this clip, we're going to be talking about what the appetite is for Illinois lawmakers, something that we discuss in another segment of this broadcast with Chicago reporter Jeremy Gorner. We'll be talking about the upcoming legislative session and what it might look like. Here's what John Schroyer is hearing from lawmakers.
And in terms of what lawmakers are interested in doing, there's definitely an appetite, at least in some sectors. It's hard to gauge among the entire General Assembly, how much political will there is for changing marijuana laws and business structures. But I know several are very keen on making changes to the social equity program, on delivering more assistance to those businesses. And I mean, some of the specific changes that were suggested to me are tweaks to the law that would make it easier for cannabis social equity companies, especially to attract investors, so that they could hopefully actually operationalize their licenses in sometime in the near future. There's also been talk of allowing dispensaries, in particular retailers, to perform home deliveries, which currently is still illegal, but that's something that's pretty common in a number of other states, like California, for instance. And there are other changes also on the table, such as allowing registered medical marijuana patients to purchase at any dispensary they want, as opposed to having to choose a single dedicated dispensary where they buy all of their medicine. So there's a number of different tweaks that are still being discussed in Springfield. It's just really a question of what might get traction with lawmakers and when, because that's it's just always another moving target.
Well,
so that's what John is hearing, I guess, from lawmakers. Interesting to hear that he's hearing delivery discussed again, because that's something that I at least have not heard discussed for a number of years, at least within the context of Illinois cannabis as it was legalized at a state level. Of course, we referenced the hemp ban at the beginning of this segment. You know, people get so contentious about the hemp ban and lose track of the fact that, you know, many of these cannabis companies, many of the largest cannabis companies are also selling their exact same cannabis products as hemp. I'm putting in air quotes, and you can get it delivered directly to your door via DoorDash or Uber Eats or insert other, you know, delivery app, food delivery app here. I think that's a win. The state hasn't been able to do that in 6 years, and it was essentially accomplished in 2018 via the federal farm bill by way of air quotes hemp. But I digress. I won't get into the hemp topic right now. What did you think about that segment? Feel free to call in now, folks. It's colememo.com/live. We are taking callers. Feel free to call in. We're about to bump into the next segment, so it's the perfect time to call in. You don't have to turn on your video. You don't even have to tell me your real name. You can come on and just share your thoughts. You can disagree with me right here on the Cole Memo, folks. Let's keep this show rolling. Okie dokie. We are back, folks, and it's just about 7:52 p.m. on this Tuesday night. Thank you all for tuning in to this live broadcast of the Cole Memo and dropping comments. I'm guessing this is Josh Weisbart. Confirm or deny that. They say, quote unquote, hemp. I think you're the owner of a dispensary. For some reason, the name is escaping me right now. Here we go. Satisfied Mind says, evening, good evening. Thank you for tuning in. Once again, we are taking live callers right now, so feel free to call in. Apparently, there's a huge outage on YouTube right now, so if it's affecting some of my listeners, I do apologize. If you don't subscribe to me on YouTube, do it. colememo.com/YouTube. That's where it's like the primary location I go live, so check that out. My phone is blowing up, but it's okay because it's Tuesday night and we're having a good time. Smoking Pots and Pans says, I'm glad to learn that it was YouTube. I thought it was my phone or maybe something on my Wi-Fi. So apparently people are being affected, and that's sad to hear. Satisfied Mind says it took them a minute to get in. Damn, very, very sad to hear. But it is what it is. It's technology, folks. Thank you for tuning in to
the Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo. The Cole Memorandums.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
This drug is dangerous. You cannot play with it. It's not funny. It's not something to laugh about. Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. Yes, indeed. Good people do not smoke marijuana. We are live. Yes, we are live. And we are taking callers. Karma Club, indeed. That's who I was thinking of, Josh. Thank you for confirming. Okay, we are talking about the hemp ban. So if you didn't know, recently in Chicago, there was a proposed ban on hemp that would have banned certain products. So I believe smokables, vapables, but like products like ointments or beverages would have been allowed if it would have come to pass. So city council voted to pass it, but just like with state government, the top dog has to sign it into law, right? So the mayor would have had to sign this into ordinance law. I don't know what it's called at a city level, but Mayor Brandon Johnson stepped up and vetoed it. We're going to watch this report from CBS News Chicago. Here it is.
Today, Mayor Brandon Johnson vetoed a ban on the sale of most intoxicating hemp-derived products in Chicago. The mayor said he had concerns about the potential negative impacts a prohibition-style ban could have on the city. The ban passed by a 32-16 vote in city council last month. It would take 34 votes to override the mayor's veto.
So 34 votes to override the mayor's veto. I've seen some people discuss this in the media and they're like, are they going to override the veto? Well, according to Alderman Quinn, who I know is the person that kind of has led this charge in Chicago. I don't pay a lot of attention to Chicago politics, but it's been hard to ignore South Side Alderman Marty Quinn and his fight for the children with regard to hemp. So he basically has said in at least Chicago sometimes have reported that he's said, and I'll put this big screen, I don't have the votes. I'm at 32, which again was the tally that they actually passed it at. He says, I don't have the votes. I'm at 32. I don't have 34. That's where it's at. It's not going to change. I still have the ban on the southwest side in the Midway Airport region, and I would anticipate other alders doing the same thing in their wards, in addition to the 7 wards where hemp products are already banned. He said, Quinn said the mayor will now have to live with the consequences of, quote, placing business over the safety of kids. I'm curious what you all think about this. Definitely an interesting topic, an interesting thing to see unfold, to say the least. And yeah, we've got some live commenters saying not enough votes to overturn the veto. No, not enough votes to overturn the veto. And I just think it's an interesting thing because you have to consider that there is an impending ban this November. If nothing else passes by November, hemp, I'm saying again in air quotes, as we know it, will no longer be as we know it, which, if you didn't know, as we know it now, is descheduled cannabis, which is sort of the end goal, the ability to get cannabis shipped to your door, to be able to trade it in kind, to be able to easily get a license and sell cannabis. It's sort of the status quo as it is the end goal, or at least close to it, I should say. I've always said, and I've been saying for the past year, this framework, this federal framework, if you will, of descheduled cannabis could be improved with 3 things: an age gate, and that's whatever you decide an adult should be. It used to be that we decided an adult was 18. Now it seems like we're swinging towards 21, at least with regard to drug consumption, with like tobacco and alcohol and cannabis. Typically, you have to be 21 to just buy it over the counter. You can go fight for your country and lose your life at 18, but here in the US of A, you can't consume drugs until you're 21. In most states, I should say. I think in New Orleans, a place that's near and dear to my heart, as long as you have permission of your parents at a certain age, you can consume alcohol. There's certain states that probably have similar frameworks. The point, though, is there should be an age gate for all cannabis at a federal level. You pick the age, 18 or 21, whatever floats your boat. Then there should be a labeling mandate. And I'm talking about commercial sale of cannabis at this point. There should be a labeling mandate that says whatever is on the label is actually within the product. And if it turns out that that's not what is within the product, there should be a course of action, for lack of better words. And then, just to keep this short, the third improvement that could be made to a federal cannabis framework would be a testing mandate, with like GMP certification. In other words, anything that can't be sold in our food supply, which I realize is not a great standard because our food supply is like, what the fuck is in our food supply? But at the very least, if it can't be sold within our, try that sentence again. At the very least, if it can't be sold within our food supply, it should not be able to be sold within our cannabis supply. Bam. And if you want to add to that list, you can. But those, I think, are my 3 minimum improvements to any descheduled federal cannabis framework. It seems like that's the answer, to be completely honest. But Jay Weisbart 44 says he's not interested in battling landlords and vacant property owners, and we'll just wait till November, which I'm guessing you mean when the official ban would set in if there are no changes. And some other comments. So I appreciate you all tuning in. It's a good Tuesday night, and I'm curious what you all think. If you have any thoughts on this, I'll just say it. It was interesting to see this go on for so long. I wasn't necessarily surprised by it. I had some people ask me about it on social media. They're like, "Do you think he's going to ban hemp?" I wouldn't be surprised. Do you guys remember the last legislative session here in Illinois? And the answer is probably no, because who the fuck pays attention to legislative sessions here in Illinois? Nerd alert, I do. In the last legislative session for Illinois, there was a hemp ban being proposed, and none other than Brandon Johnson lobbied against it. It was like a big news thing. It was like huge in the news. I didn't really think it was that big of a deal, but it was huge in the news. And so as a result of that, I wasn't really surprised. Smoking Pots and Pants says a lot of states allow minors to drink with parents with consent and specific laws surrounding it. Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking. Some cat on the internet says 50 years of cannabis prohibition, not one day of federal progress. They don't need to arrest everyone. One arrest justifies denying rights to all cannabis users. Very, very well said. Well, folks, I'm going to segue. I'm going to bring on a guest, a surprise guest, somebody you may have heard of. I will take callers after this. If you want to call in, let me get this ready so that you can call in. ColeMemo.com/live. You can call in from your phone, from your tablet, whatever. You don't have to turn on your camera. You can call in, but like I say, I'm about to bring a guest on, so I won't actually bring you on stage for until we're done. But we are taking callers because we are live. Folks, what are you smoking on? I'll ask you that beforehand. I've got like a few joints that I have to work through. I've got this joint, then I've got this joint, then I've got these joints. Let's see here. Let's put these over here. I've got to work through these. Can I get through all these in one live session? Jay Weisbart says they're not surprised either. Thank you for dropping your comments. Keep the comments rolling in, folks. Keep the comments rolling in. I will read your comments and we'll segue to our next segment with a surprised guest. We're going to be talking about the upcoming Illinois legislative session. We might even talk a little bit about hemp and, the governor's upcoming budget address. We'll definitely be talking about that. Sound fun? I think that sounds fun. Okay, well, let's get into it. This is going to be a surprise. Jeremy Gorner from the Chicago Tribune is joining me in this pre-recorded segment of the Cole Memo. In this segment, we're taking a step away from our normal run of show to talk about Illinois politics. And we may touch on some federal politics and other headlines along the way. Joining me to do that is Jeremy Gorner from the Chicago Tribune. Jeremy, long time no speak. Thanks for sitting back down. How's it going?
Good. How about you, Cole?
Great. Before we jump in, for listeners who may not be familiar, can you remind everyone what you cover for the Tribune?
Yes. So I am an Illinois state government reporter for the Chicago Tribune. I'm primarily based out of our Springfield bureau, which is in the Illinois State Capitol building.
Gotcha. Thank you again for sitting down with me. And we've got the governor's budget address this week. I should say that today is February 12th, 2026. So we're looking at the budget address next week. What do you think people can be expected to hear from the governor? And I know that's a big topic, so feel free to take your time on the budget address.
And it's also very fitting that you have someone on your show to cover state government on Abraham Lincoln's birthday. So I'm just going to throw that out there, Cole. Yeah. So next week is going to be the governor's state of the state / budget address. It's the one that he has every year. He's had it every year since he's been governor since 2019, and he's like usual, obviously he's pretty mum so far about what's going to go into that address. However, I think we could all, anyone who covers him could probably take a wild guess that, he's really, Governor Pritzker's really emerged as one of President Donald Trump's most ardent critics for, everything from, obviously accusing the president of being a threat to democracy, from issues ranging from that to threats to cut off blue states like Illinois from federal funding in areas like healthcare, education, etc. Basically, if you recall, anyone who followed the governor's speech last year, it really kind of drew a lot of gasps from his Republican arch rivals when he basically compared President Trump's leadership, as to 1930s Nazi era Germany. The governor obviously got a lot of attention for that, and I think that the key difference between last year and this year, though, Cole, is that when Governor Pritzker gave his address, it was probably it was probably weeks after Trump was inaugurated, for his second term. He really hadn't done a lot yet. I mean, he had issued some executive orders, but here we are a year into the Trump presidency, and to go to Pritzker, a lot of what he was fearing through Trump, through the Trump administration, in some of the initiatives that were in Project 2025, in the governor's mind, that's those warnings that he was giving have become a reality, according to him. And we've also seen in the last year, it's been a pretty tumultuous year just in Illinois and in Chicago alone. I mean, we saw how the Trump administration had beefed up immigration enforcement in Democratic-run cities across the country, obviously, when you see Border Patrol agents in communities in communities within Chicago and communities within Minneapolis, they were met with some pretty stiff resistance. I know in Illinois that had prompted some legislation during veto session to restrict the enforcement of ICE and Border Patrol in buildings that are controlled by local governments, I think mainly courthouses. So that was some legislation that Illinois lawmakers had passed during veto session as an answer to that. But, aside from whatever's going on with immigration enforcement and other issues, through the Trump administration, there's also this threat of, federal funding being cut off to Illinois by way of SNAP benefits and Medicaid. And so we're probably going to hear we've heard a lot about that already from the governor's office. And I wouldn't be surprised if during his budget address, he touches on that. And then he touches on what the game plan is between now and the end of session. It's like the question is going to be, how is the governor going to respond within his power as a state executive to actions from the federal government? So it's really going to, I guess it'll be interesting to see, the current budget is $55 billion. It's, a record high for an operating budget in Illinois. And And even then, the governor has described this current budget as a tight budget, as things are getting more expensive across the country. So we'll see next week what programs, if any, he plans to cut, what funding in some areas might increase, what might decrease, and how is he going to use state law for this next budget, which will begin on the next budget cycle, which begins July 1st, to offset any potential losses in federal funding, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, this should definitely be interesting to see develop. And I will just say that it's crazy to think, Jeremy, it looks like it was just about a year ago that I sat back down with you and we were discussing the recent budget address. Apparently, Governor Pritzker made an off-the-cuff reference to Madigan,
right?
The GOP's renewed calls for ethics reforms, and
Mhm.
yeah, it was kind of in the wake of that recent Madigan conviction.
Right.
Wow, that was a year.
Yeah, I mean,
ago.
there's been a lot happening in the last year, obviously, Cole. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely keeping you busy there in Springfield.
Yeah.
So, it sounds like we're expecting to hear a budget address that probably like you said, points out the fact maybe some of the things that Governor Pritzker warned us about during his next or his last address. He'll from his perspective, he might talk about how those things have come to fruition.
Right.
He might put other proposals forward to further Trump-proof Illinois, for lack of better words. It sounds like he also may have the perspective of like, okay, if you want something here, what are you going to cut there? I've heard,
which was a big
that.
theme, I think, of his budget address. Like, I don't want to say a big theme, but last year that was kind of like a big takeaway from his administration. Is if because he's going to see a lot of, this is the time of year, Cole, where the governor's office is going to see a lot of requests from lawmakers, and I'm sure that, I think it's easy for people to think like, oh, well, Pritzker's a Democrat, Illinois is a blue state, the Illinois House, the Illinois Senate, they are all controlled by Democrats by like a mile, right? I mean, there's big super majorities in the House and Senate, all controlled by Democrats. Well, just because everyone's a Democrat, I mean, there may be some uniformity on like a overall ideology there, but these lawmakers come from different districts around the state of Illinois and have a lot of different, they're from different districts that have different problems, different issues, and different requests than some of their Democratic allies. So he's probably in, and not that the governor has not said that he wants to like siphon off Republicans either. I mean, I know that there's a lot of tension between Republican lawmakers who have been really kind of starving, many who feel like they're starving to have a voice, get a meaningful seat at the table with the Pritzker administration on many issues, including budgetary issues, right? So the governor's going to have his hands full because this is the time of year where he's going to get fellow Democratic lawmakers, and then, outside organizations really wanting to get a piece of that state budget. And the governor is going to have to turn a lot of people down.
Yeah. And just a brief tangent, I want to underline a point you made. It's interesting, like maybe out from the outside looking in, people might think, like you said, oh, blue Illinois. But it is interesting, as you said, how the Democrats, even though they might be in the majority, like in some ways, there's a lot of what you might call moderates in the Democratic Party. Like, I think again, from the outside looking in, people think, oh, blue Illinois, and we're just doing everything. Like, it's just a Democratic paradise. But I think I would even say that like the rule of 60 in the House, like that's hard to achieve, even though they have the majority, and
yeah. I mean, you need 60 votes period to get, a vote passed in some instances, depending on the time of year, if you're in the House. But the way that Speaker Chris Welch, the Democratic House Speaker, He has this informal rule that he wants 60 Democrats on board before even calling it for a vote, to basically ensure, like you said, Cole, that it's passage,
Yeah.
House to get over that simple majority threshold. So yeah, I mean that's obviously it sounds a lot easier said than done because you got progressives and you have moderates who have competing interests. They're largely on the same page, but not always, especially on budgetary issues.
And that was sort of my point. Like, just to use a silly example, and I say silly, it's like a lot of what we talk about on my show, but like cannabis policy, there's been no movement on cannabis policy for the last 6 years. There's been a little bit here and there.
Yep.
But there's been no major developments, but there's been, the same policies proposed over and over again. And I guess my point in using that silly example, as I called it, is that, somebody outside might attribute cannabis policy to be like a blue policy. And it's like, oh, I'm sure they're just taking care of cannabis. And it's like, no, even like a policy like that, which you would think is like sort of a left leaning idea, sort of comes with that territory, if you will. Even a policy like that has been relatively stagnant. And from what I understand, it's exactly because of the rule of 60, among other things, And I guess I just use that point to illustrate that it's like, even though the Democrats are in a majority, like there's nuance to it. Not everybody agrees on everything. So, yeah.
Well, and I think I want to add to your point, Cole. If you recall a year ago, there was a lot of tension between Governor Pritzker and Brandon Johnson, the Chicago mayor, over this very issue.
Yep.
There was legislation that was kind of percolating, I want to say, during lame duck session last year, where it dealt with it was basically a safety measure for hemp. It was a hemp regulation measure that dealt, where you had one side that wanted to put in guardrails to prevent marketing campaigns from attracting kids, basically, for harmful products, and you had another side that didn't disagree with that, but didn't feel like the legislation was doing enough to help small business, could still hurt small businesses. So, I mean, this was obviously legislation, the safety regulation legislation was, you have Governor Pritzker in the governor's mansion trying to wrangle support for this a couple days before lame duck ended. And then you have Mayor Johnson basically trying to get people to vote, to not support it. And in the end, the bill wasn't called. They just did not have the Democrats just did not have the votes. And it became a very divisive issue at the end among Democrats, among, just Speaker Welch's House members. Since then, there's obviously been some federal movement. I'm sure you're a lot more familiar with that than I am. And it's kind of, put things at a standstill in Springfield. Although the city of Chicago, still might be trying to see what they can do on the local level. But yeah, I mean, that's a great example of an issue that caused a lot of division within Democrats in Springfield last year.
Yeah, and it was correct me if I'm wrong. I heard a reporter say, I can't remember if they were from the Tribune. They may have been from somewhere else. But this was a rare instance in which Governor Pritzker did get involved on a legislative issue like that. That's sort of rare, and the fact that it didn't go sort of the way he was, applying pressure was notable.
I think that so I think that the governor does get the governor. The governor has a legislative agenda just like anyone else, but
sure.
It did seem like he was maybe being more hands-on about it. Like it was more obvious that he was more hands-on about it, because he's definitely talked about hemp as a safety concern, and especially the way it's marketed. And he's, I've never, you don't really see him as hands-on with respect to legislative policy as he was with this. I mean, yeah, that is rare.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll move on and close out with what you're hearing about the legislative priorities this session. But I'll just say, since you brought that specific topic up, I had gotten involved in it, and it was interesting for me because just talking to legislators, like they would ask me, like, the first thing that I would come in, they'd have like a piece of paper in front, and they'd always be flipping the page because somebody else was coming out of the room,
Right.
and they'd say, so who are you here with and who are you representing? And I was like, oh no, I'm just like, I'm Cole. I'm here because of an issue that like I'm concerned about, and really I came, but what was interesting is they would always go, like, they'd like look up at me, like they were like kind of surprised about that. But anyways, I just kind of approached that issue from like you said, I agreed with all the safety measure proposals where it's like kids shouldn't be able to buy it. It shouldn't be marketed towards kids. But yeah, my concern was that like I've been buying these cannabis products online and getting them delivered to my door. And Governor Pritzker had like a few years ago supported a proposal. A press member asked him at a grand opening of a dispensary. If people want to look it up, it's Pritzker grand opening of Ivy Hall. They asked him about delivery, and he said he'd be supportive of it as long as we can, just like we do with alcohol. Basically, he said as long as we have those same safety measures. But it's been like I say, a few years, and so that's one of those little things that I liked about that came with the subject of hemp, where it's like, finally I can get it delivered to my door just like any other product. Finally I can pay for it with my credit card. And there's so many other things that came with it. But like you said, it'll be interesting to see how it develops as that federal change recently happened. But that's not what we're here to talk about. That we'll talk about that on another segment of the show. What seems to be the priorities this session, and what do you think are you hearing might actually have the energy to pass? I heard at one point it was cost of living, right? Cost of living things, and that includes like state health insurance. There was maybe something else, but what are you hearing, or what's your feeling?
Yeah, Cole. I mean, cost of living, affordability, these are all priorities that Democrats have talked about for months, and it mirrors really a message nationally for Democrats who are going to try to use that issue against Trump and his Republican allies in Congress, during, leading up to the November 3rd election in an effort to try to flip seats in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, where you have national Democrats blaming Republicans for things in America being so expensive, depending on what it is. I know price of gas is under $3, but there's groceries and utilities and all that other stuff, that those are like baseline necessities for average Americans, right? So that national message has really kind of echoed what state lawmakers and the governor as well are really going to try to push. Now the question is, okay, well, how do we get there? Especially in the face of all this uncertainty of how much federal funding Illinois might lose out on because of policies from the Trump administration. I mean, there's you have progressive Democrats that have already introduced proposals since the new legislative session started, for instituting a higher tax rate for the wealthy. I believe for millionaires or billionaires. That's kind of something that they're looking at. They're looking at closing certain corporate loopholes, preventing tax havens for these multinational corporations. Like, these are some proposals that have been thrown out there by progressives. But other than that, that's kind of like, when you talk to Democrats in the legislature, it's like, well, how do we make life more affordable? And their solution is always tax the wealthy, which is always a lot more complicated than it sounds, especially at a time where, Illinois faces budget deficits, and, the way to curtail that is to raise taxes in some areas or institute new taxes. They last couple of years, they've had to raise taxes by hundreds of millions of dollars, but not so much on like working families, but on these so-called sin taxes, right? Like video gambling or sports betting, rather. Same thing.
Cannabis.
And like cigarettes. Well, not so much cigarettes, but other tobacco products and vaping,
Yeah.
stuff
Cannabis. I mean,
Cannabis
cannabis
too. Yeah,
is definitely one. Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, cannabis. So, so that's that's something that's been kind of the solution, and is that making life more affordable for Illinoisans? Well, it doesn't. For some, no. For others, it's other folks are kind of indifferent to that, but at the same time, Illinois is just one of 50 states, and it's certainly feeling the ripple effects of tariffs and other parts of the national economy that, with the exception of certain things, like I said, gasoline, I mean, there's, a lot of things aren't cheaper. So you can bet that in the next, what are we? It's in the next 4 months, because the session ends, 4.5 months rather, because session ends May 31st, Springfield. That's going to be a big priority for, probably the main priority for the legislature, is trying to see what proposals can they actually pass and make headway on that'll make things easier for Illinoisans. But another thing we didn't talk about, Cole, and I'm sorry, I'm just getting to this now. It's also an election year, and not to bury the lead, as they say in my profession, but it is an election year, and there's always that fear that, do lawmakers really want to rock the boat, on a lot of issues on an election year? That remains to be seen. I mean, March 17th is are the primary elections, and this is my 4th year covering the beat, and what I've seen is that in an election year, not a lot gets done in Springfield before March 17th, or not a lot of things really get started before March 17th. And then they have like 2.5 months after that to pass a budget and pass some big ticket items. So, and then that's going to be another factor. And then, you talk about affordability, there's also energy costs. I mean, one thing I will say about the legislature is they got a lot done during the last veto session in the fall. They passed a sweeping energy bill that, really kind of has really kind of helped open the door for wind and solar projects, with, the ultimate goal of, because the governor has a lot of these clean energy goals where he's trying to replace traditional energy sources like, traditional energy sources like coal and nuclear power plants and stuff like that with, clean energy like wind and solar. But, this legislation bill that passed is, which is now law, is going to kind of try to cast a balance. Like they're lifting a moratorium on nuclear power plants so that those don't go away, because there's still people still use that kind of power. But at the, while wind and solar can kind of kick off, but at the same time, you have Republicans who say that this is still going to add surcharges to people's electric bills, and it's not going to make energy costs any cheaper. So now you still have a lot of folks who feel like the General Assembly really needs to do a better job to lower utility bills this session. And a lot of that has to do with data centers, the emergence of these data centers that, with the advent of artificial intelligence, data centers are taking up a lot of electricity. They're taking up a lot of power on the power grid and depleting the electricity supply. And or not depleting it, but they're taking up a big portion of it. And that's making things more expensive. So what you might see too is legislation, which I believe some's already been introduced, about regulating some of these data centers, just as a possible solution to helping lower some of these electric bills. So that's going to be that kind of, but Cole, still that all falls into the affordability bucket.
Yeah, it's interesting how those two issues just briefly compound each other. You've got this rising demand for energy, and then you have the need. We've identified a need. Many people, I would say, agree with the idea of transitioning away from fossil fuels, but as you said, there it is a transition. Like the demand isn't there, and so while we're transitioning, I think some critics argue you know you're purchasing or we're purchasing energy from other states, so it's like not negligible. But I was kind of having this debate with somebody in my life the other day. It's like at what point does somebody just have to make an investment? And that's kind of how I almost look at this is an investment. No, we're not saying we're going to be green today, but the investment, you could almost say the same thing about fossil fuels or any other energy source. Like when it started, it was very inefficient and the returns we were getting were, not as good as they are today. But guess what happened? Because we put all of our, pun intended, energy into it, our focus into it, the energy sources became more efficient, like the internal combustion engine, for example, so much more efficient nowadays. And so, like I say, it's a topic I hear both sides on, where it's like, yeah, I mean this, and like I say, I feel like it's made more complicated because of the rising demand for energy.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's a whole huge topic.
Yeah. I mean, there's look, and it's kind of complicated, right? I mean, I saw, there's this, like AI, because we were talking about artificial intelligence being kind of the reasoning for these emergence of data centers, right? All over the place. And, it's like even these non-budgetary issues. So, let's talk about technology, talk about AI. There's been a lot of AI related legislation that's been passed in the last couple of years. The question, but it's a lot of it is safety, like deep fake image, making deep fake images of people for the purposes of cyberbullying and harassment. No brainer. You got to protect against that. And that's what the Illinois legislature has done. But, there's also, and also, I believe there was a bill that passed about, for community colleges where, AI cannot be the sole source for classroom instruction in in the classrooms. They can be used as a support tool, but they can't replace live human teachers, right? But there's also a concern, Republicans have the concern about AI safety is important, but we also don't want to stifle innovation. We don't want to, the government don't want to be, we don't want to stand in the way of, of people who, inventors and technology to be successful in America. And so it's going to be a matter of trying to cast the right balance. I know that the Trump administration is a big proponent of AI to the point where they have an executive order where they basically want to go after certain states if they feel like they're regulating them too much. So that's going to be another thing to watch. Again, in addition to depriving Illinois of federal funding, what are the consequences of some of these other initiatives like what I just mentioned? What does that mean for states like Illinois that have really taken steps to regulate AI? So yeah, that's something else I think to watch in the next couple of months or the next year.
Yeah, well, that last thought you just said reminded me of how Illinois is sort of, and I don't know if you know much about this. It just, the thought reminded me, and we'll start to close, of how Illinois, I know, is sort of, or I get the impression is sort of unique that we'll have lawsuits against these social media companies for privacy violations. And this, what you're talking about right now, sounds exactly like that. And I wonder if it starts with AI. Again, I'm just postulating right now, so maybe no need to devote any of your time to that. But yeah, I start to wonder how that evolves.
No. I mean, it's like I've just noticed, like just for my line of work, I use social media. I have to use Facebook. I have to use X. And what I'm seeing more and more are posts, that definitely look real to the naked eye, and then when you dig deeper, you see that the content that they're trying to promote is inaccurate, and some of the images that are out there also look very suspicious, like they're not even real either. I mean, that's so no, it's good to have a healthy skepticism of this technology.
I am curious really quick what you think about that. I recently, speaking of Abraham Lincoln, I think this is a good way to close the show. If you go to the Abraham Lincoln Museum in Springfield, there's a really great, have you been?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Love it.
There's a really great section that kind of, I feel, covers propaganda.
Yeah.
And like and it talks about how some people like, made things up or whatever. And what it reminded me of is like, because when you bring that topic up, what I start to think is like, man, are we ever going to trust anything that we see or hear again? And I was like, wait a minute, this isn't a new issue. It just feels different because video has felt like something where it's like, well, there's video evidence. There's no question.
Could be deceitful,
Right.
It could
And
be,
so I guess,
it could be
yeah,
deceitful in that someone says it's video of something else or it's AI generated. And,
right.
Yeah.
I guess it was weird. We used to take video evidence for granted as like, this is proof because
it was
it's
gospel.
video evidence. Yeah. But now it's like, I mean, yeah, it's just kind of interesting to think about what the future may look like and how you can, what does hygiene look like with sort of consuming information?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know what does proper hygiene look like, but we're not going to solve that now. Jeremy, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know that last segment where we talked about the legislative priority session, we went anywhere and everywhere. Did you want to put that in a bottle? Like it sounds like basically what you said was that we've got an upcoming election season, or we've got an upcoming election rather. We're in election season, and as a result, people may be less likely to sort of put themselves out there. So if we see something pass, it's probably going to be something that's not crazy controversial. Is that fair?
Look, here's the thing. I mean, I say that cautiously because look, it is Springfield.
Sure.
Springfield surprises you. I mean, you're going to hear a lot of talk though, with especially in an election year like this, and whether it's in the halls of the Capitol or just in commercials or in town hall meetings with politicians. You're going to hear affordability. You're going to hear about energy costs being too high. You're going to hear about grocery prices being too high. You're going to hear about we didn't even talk about property taxes, Cole. That's another thing that I hear lawmakers, that's something else they want to address too. That's another huge complaint for people, especially if they live in, you're from like Champaign area.
Yeah.
I know in Chicago and Cook County, huge issue in the collar counties, and it's tricky because it's large. You hear about it more on the county, it's a county, local government issue, but the question is how much can the state of Illinois really do to stem that tide? And, that's going to be something else. I think lawmakers, they've been looking at it for a couple of years, and I'm sure that's something else they're going to continue to do, for the next few months down in Springfield.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, wanted to thank you again, as always, for sitting down with me. Thank you for the work that you do. And folks,
kind of went all over the place, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I asked for 15 minutes of your time. You gave me a little bit more than double of that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Folks, I'll put links to Jeremy's work in the description for this episode so you can check it out, support, and learn more. I always encourage you to read the information for yourself. So, Jeremy, again, thank you for the time today.
Thanks, Cole.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground tonight, folks. Speaking of ground, people in the chat are talking about the radioactive. What are we talking about in the chat right now? I don't know, but you can call in live at colememo.com/live. You can see the chat right there. The people are talking about radioactive water in the ground. That's not something that I like to hear, especially because we have a great aquifer in central Illinois. If you didn't know that, fun fact, you tune in for Illinois fun facts, I'm sure, right? Now, I hope you tune in for Illinois drug policy or just drug policy in general. But I'm glad you're tuning in. If you haven't smashed the like button and you are tuning in, please do that. I would appreciate it. What are you smoking on tonight, folks? Got to be smoking on something. Like I said, I am smoking on some homegrown, sipping on some Cantrip orange soda, the 50 milligram soda, which you can get at drinkcantrip.com/Cole memo, 15% off your order. 15% goes to me, which I will use to buy more Cantrip because I'm addicted to Cantrip. drinkcantrip.com/Cole memo. If you're wondering what Cantrip is, apparently it's like a reference to like something. I don't know. Look up Cantrip. It's apparently a literary reference. Excuse me. People are saying radioactive aquifer. That's got to be a new strain name. That's the next hot strain. Watch out. Yo, what are you smoking on? I'm smoking on that radioactive aquifer. Anyways, somebody said fizzy cola in the bowl. Satisfied Mind says they're smoking on jet fuel homegrown. Oh yeah? Well, I'm smoking on radioactive aquifer. Smoking on some hood candy with some pink runts rosin. They're vaping it. You're vaping jet fuel. Nice. Blue Lobster. That sounds wild. That sounds wild. I've not heard of that one before. Honestly. We need, like, I want to I'm going to write that one down. Radioactive aquifer. And Miggy, I hope that's not a joke about the Blue Lobster. Radioactive aquifer. I'm writing down Blue Lobster. I'm going to look that up. Blue Lobster. Rock Lobster. Genetic Memory Farms is always smoking on a cross. Let's see what they're working with. Deep Chunk crossed with C99. Has Parmesan and pineapple notes and smell. Wild. West Coast Special, super popular. Yeah. Are we talking about the Blue Lobster? If so, people might be laughing at me right now. They're like, what? You've never heard of Blue Lobster? I guess not. But I think we're about to get an answer here because Miggy has joined the chat. How's it going, Miggy?
Hold on, I gotta mute your fucking stream.
No problem.
Add 2 fucking views. Catch you up.
Echo. Oh, it's real. Here, hold on. Let me put you full screen. Wow. And oh my god, it looks fucking.
Get you out of the jar. Oh, there you go.
No, the nugs look crazy, dude. How does it smell?
Oh, it's very nice.
Nice, dude.
Yeah, man.
Did you just pick that up from a local dispo or something?
Yep, down the street pot shop.
There you go.
Hey,
Have you ever tried Blue Lobster before? That's the first time I've ever heard of it. Somebody else says it's a West Coast special though, so I was curious.
I think strain names are over exaggerated on man.
For sure, but like, just honestly, have you ever heard Blue Lobster?
Nah, but I haven't heard a lot of shit that I smoke, dude. Because I walk in and I'd be like, "Yo, I need an indica mid-range price."
Right.
Period, man. You know, and then I'm always sharing with everybody here. So
honestly, even when they ask me that, like I come in, they'll ask me like, "What are you looking for?" And I'll be like, "I don't know, man. Just give me something." And then they'll be like, "Do you want indica, sativa?" And I'll be like, "I don't know, man. Just give me something."
Well, I'm an indica person. I'll tell you that. I like somebody told me I like to fight things because I like to fight my high. You know, I'm just like always trying to do things the hard way. But I want to know I'm high, dude. I want that weed where you're like, oh, I regret it, but you know what? We're doing shit today, weed.
We're just trying to hold you down, but you got to fight back. I understand what you're saying.
We're going to work. We're gonna get up at least and get in the fucking car and go to work. Shit,
Hell
man.
yeah, man. Well, dude, thanks for calling in and showing the Blue Lobster. Anything you want to say while you're on? I appreciate you calling in.
No, I like, I follow you because obviously the Illinois, right? Like the whole, I'm going to be invested there and I can't wait. We're getting closer. Hopefully it's before 420 now. It's just never. we hope to be open by last December, so it's just what it is. But
it is cool though to see Tom post updates. I don't know if people follow Tom on social media, and I think he posts it on the channel too. So if you don't follow cannabis legalization news, do that. But I mean, the dispensary it exists now. That's the cool part.
Yeah,
and you're like, it's cool to see it like being developed, the vault being developed, all those different things. So,
well, you guys got silly rules like that little pocket giveaway thing. I mean, there's we don't agree with any of this shit, but it's what you got to play with,
Yeah, it's the rules. That's the rules.
I mean, I really do hope you get some good change off those drinks, but I think come November, dude, you're gonna see everything change.
Well, and what I'm hoping, and I feel like you'll be down with this idea. What I'm hoping that with Pritzker eventually eyeing a presidential run, right? So right now he's running for re-election, but also he eventually is probably going to run for president. Like I don't think that's a surprise for anybody that's tuning in, right? And I guess my thing is like he wants everybody to be happy, and what I mean by that is including his cannabis licensees. And so I feel like now more than ever, cannabis licensees in Illinois have leverage to like demand change. So it's like, if he tries to run on a platform of like, oh, I made the most equitable state, that there's no like problems with that like narrative. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think, but every state has a problem. Hold on a second.
Oh, you're good. I'm curious what
people
tuning in are thinking.
Sorry, my kid was asking me if I could have a beer. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. I mean, I share. But that's all still far off. I don't know if you follow on Twitter, man. There's a lot of noise about the rescheduling actually happening, like Mike. But that's a.
What are you hearing? What are you hearing?
Anthony Martinelli. What is it? The Marijuana Herald or whatever.
Yep.
But he was saying there was some noise just today.
Really?
Rescheduling. So
I'll have to look it up.
And I think the Dell was kind of like chiping because everybody thinks they know somebody, right? Like in DC.
Sure.
So fingers crossed though, because I think that'd be real progress. Something federal is what we need, right? For everybody to have a chance.
Yeah.
And not everybody lose their jobs.
Absolutely. Do you recall roughly what you saw? I'm looking at his Twitter right now.
No, it was today. Here I can. Yeah, you can.
Here, I'll pull up his Twitter. Just
yeah.
Just because I think that'd be cool. I haven't been paying attention today. I've been kind of under a rock. Something on Anthony's Twitter. This is that was past today. I'm scrolling up. Legislation.
Maybe go into replies.
Oh, okay.
I thought I saw something today.
I thought I saw something like recently, where he said like they doubled down or something like that. Is that what you're thinking of?
That's it. Yeah, the double down shit. So
okay, yeah, I'd have to find that right now.
But again, it's all speculation, man. I mean, like, that's why like Tom and I partnered up because he's an actual lawyer who's into that. Like, I'll talk about tech all day. I'm talking about the law, I'm just trying to avoid going to jail. That's all I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so like the whole process, and I get it, man. The hemp thing was cool, but you knew it was coming. And, I mean, like, there's always the fun police who want to like shit on people's like, and especially when people were like selling it like THC is weed, bro. Well, if you say that enough times, you're gonna get the attention of fuckers that.
At times, I will give you that. It did feel too good to be true.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, here in Washington State, I experienced it with. I'm telling you, man, it was a beautiful capitalist pure market where the cops weren't arresting most people. People who were getting fucked with it was because they weren't paying off the local cops enough. It was shady as fuck, but that's how it worked. But people, there were like less arrests. The only arrests that happened during Washington State's medical time really were the feds. And so it was a beautiful time, man. Like out here, anybody, like I could just take up a whole room and grow weed and then sell that weed to a dispensary. California had that same kind of thing going on too in the early days of their medical, where it was growers, not like licensed growers and shit. It was just dudes walking in with bags and pounds and be like, hey, you know, and then you'd have your inspector or somebody. Do you ever see what's the Harborside? The what's the one down in California with D'Angelo? What did he have?
Steve D'Angelo. I don't know what you're talking. I don't know what. I've not heard of the Harborside thing, but I know who Steve D'Angelo is.
Well, he was one of the first medical, and he even had like a little like fucking documentary TV show on you know, following his pot shop.
Yeah,
and they showed it, like that was just how it was, where people would bring you no, I think it was beautiful, man. Like it was people making, like, you know, that's the problem with this market is the whole tax thing. It just sucks. Like here in Washington State, I think ours is 26% or something. And what's in Illinois? Do you know yet? For like growers and
the
I haven't
tax?
dug into it. Yeah, how much are they?
I don't know about the growers, but we do have a good question I think to discuss where we can both give our opinions without having to know answers. Hold on a second. Let me try to pull it up. Damn it, it's behind a paywall, but it's okay because maybe you've read it. I know I've read it. I haven't read it recently, but somebody asked in the comments. They said, Miggy, Cole, do you have any thoughts on the New York Times op-ed? Have you guys read it? Yes, I have read it. It's been a few days. I do have thoughts. I'll just give you my top line, and then I want to pass it over to you, Miggy.
Go for it.
My first thought, and I know other people are commenting. I know, so I've got two thoughts. First, my first thought is that if you read somewhere in that line, they do make it clear that they're not advocating that we go back. They're not saying that I think they literally say something to the effect of, like, to be clear, prohibition isn't the answer or something to that effect.
100%.
I can't remember what exactly they say, but it's something to that effect. So I think that line is very important to remember. So that was my first point. My second point, and it kind of addresses some of the comments that are floating in. Tom actually put a post on X, and I can put it on screen if folks want to read it deeper. It's too much to like maybe go into right now on air because I actually was going to reach out to Tom to go through some of it. But he was kind of talking about, and then again, I'm going to pass this over to you, maybe to see your thoughts on this, but he made a really good post on, I'm trying to find it now. Oh, here it is. On the $15.9 million machine behind the anti-marijuana surge. People are basically asking, like, you know, is smart approaches to marijuana behind this push and everything like that. And I will say, just before I pass it over to Miggy, and I'll put this on screen, if people want to look into this data that Tom shared, because it's super, super, super interesting. There's like a lot to look into, including like how money breaks down and where it comes from and all this other stuff. I can put this link in the show notes. I guess what I'm going to say is I can reach out to my friends at Smart Approaches to Marijuana to see if they have any response to this, because I've never seen anything like this. And like I said, I haven't read through it all. But your thoughts on the New York Times piece? I brought up Tom's post because I felt like it's sort of related to this whole
100%.
Like, press anti-marijuana press coverage. But your thoughts on the New York Times piece?
Well, I think, like you said, man, like you know, a good one to follow was Cultivated. Have you followed those guys yet?
Yes, absolutely.
Because they're the ones that got the one senator that suggested giving Trump a license, but like
Kirsten Gillibrand.
Yeah, but like you know, that's pretty cool that they got that. But like the whole like New York Times shit, man, that exactly it. They didn't argue against it. They said they need regulation. So it's like, what did they said the same shit. It was double talk, right? But also to make a whole big prohibition and much to do about it, it gave fuel to this smart approach fire, right? Like everybody's like, oh, even New York Times wants to double track on. It's clickbait. It's all clickbait. So
yeah, it literally is. They're just running with the headline of it again.
Yeah,
it's that very important line. Like I said, if you actually read the article, but to your point, to your point, they are the people from Smart Approaches to Marijuana. They're like taking clips of the headline and they're like making videos about it. And they're like, the New York Times is not so high on marijuana anymore. You know, just being like stupid shit like that.
No, for real. But like also like I think smart Sam's shit going on right now, like the funding that they're doing, their campaign against rescheduling. You know, it's also a good time for prohibitionists or people who are just easily adding fuel to the fire, right? Like this whole MAGA thing is weird, where people are always everything's political now, right? Everything's woke or not. It's weird. Weed's been always part of that, right? Now it's just low hanging fruit where somebody can help jump on the bandwagon of like, yeah, see, we told you it's all fucked up, but like, it's not. And again, you're just delaying fucking progress. None of these people are helping like America and society. You know, fucking, it's the no brainer. You know, I'm going on 14 years in the state, dude, of adult use. So, yeah, we haven't, you know, we're still one of the bigger funding tax people to the country, right? Blue states are usually the bigger. In Washington State's pretty, hasn't collapsed yet after 14 years. So, it's just it's sad that people still can't get on the same page, right? Like,
it is. We live
on
in
this one fucking
strange
subject.
times.
But I think this, dude, but this is where I give the nod to hemp, though. It gave that we need to normalize this fucking plant, right? Like, it's something that Tom says, like, most people aren't the pothead you are, and I don't know how many times you hear stories about people who are like now an activist because they were sick or they took pills and, oh my God, we fucking like, it seems too good to be true, but it's true. Where people are, it's an alternative, it's a wellness issue, and that's good.
Yeah, people just use it as an on-ramp, man. And now that it is going to go away in November, like I just did an interview with the former lead of the Illinois Hemp Growers Association, and they said, look, now that this is no longer like an option to sell cannabis, like what I'm going to focus my efforts on is descheduling cannabis entirely now. Like it's never that they ever, at least with this person specifically that I'm talking about, of course, and myself included.
Sure.
Like we never wanted to like fuck anybody over, or like it was just there were cool things that came with cannabis being descheduled. One of the coolest things, and I know you and Tom both agree about it because you both talk about it on the show all the time, is just the seeds. But if you extend the cool things to like drinks and then whatever else, THCA, flower, stuff like that, it's like it was just cool, man. It was just cool. It was a cool time to. I mean, look, and don't get me wrong, I had seen plenty of bunk fucking whack products. Like I've posted whack products I would never consume in my life. But it was all part of the experience. It was like
I think people shot themselves in the dick with promoting it as THCA, right? Or going, the THCA is THC, whereas they could have just been like, hey man, you want some weed? I will be your plug, right? If they would have just sold themselves at the plug, right?
That's what I'm saying. Is the people that I like, that's what they did. And then then you had other people that tried to be like, oh, it's try Delta 8 and stuff like this, and it's like, no,
I get the hustle though.
THCA.
but the problem though too is all these guys are drop shippers too. None of these people are actually like true, like they don't have a relationship with like the grow, I would imagine, right? Like where like the guys' crops are coming in and this is the rotation, all this shit. Whereas it's like, no, I'm gonna go to this.
To your point, it took me a while to find people like that. To your point, there are a lot of people out there that are drop shippers, like you said.
Well, I talk to a lot of shit that people think I love him, but like Chris 420 plays it. Because I asked him in the chat, I was like, in November, are you still going to be doing this? And he was like, no, but like, and then I asked him, where does he source his product? And he says it from a broker. So like a lot of these guys who were like, are going through brokers. Now I don't know like Dope Yola or whatever, but like Chris said that Bay Smokes, they probably go through the same drop shipper, which is still, Bay Smokes was a brand too, right? They were a vape shop or whatever first, and then they were the plug. I think they were the first plug when it came to the hemp shit, because they weren't selling it as or they weren't like hustling it like that. They were just, we got weed, but yeah, November, dude. I think all the drinks and shit are gonna go away too. Like they did it too tight when it came to the rules, but this all comes down to THC anyways. You know, like that's why people are smoking or drinking or do what the fuck they want. You know, it is the THC that, or like a naturally grown plant where people aren't stressing. I think in Washington State we didn't have to deal with this hemp thing. Like I've had drinks in our market stores. You know, I guess I hate Tom when I first started doing the podcast with Tom, and sometimes business talk is so dry and it's kind of gross, right? But it's also like it's kind of what business is, no matter what it is. Because when Tom came out here to visit me in Washington State a couple of years ago, we went on some tours, to a couple pot shops, and he had some really interesting questions like, how many SKUs do you have? Fucking think about that shit. I mean, now I do. I'm like, oh, SKUs are different products. It's a variety of options for the consumer and all this shit. I never understood why, like in the early THCA, Delta 9 shit, they should have just sold RSO. Everything could be an edible at that point. Like everybody was focused on the gummies, but still that normalization, I think, is what it was, where I can pop a gummy and, feel better or whatever. So, yeah.
It will be interesting. I will say that it'll be interesting. I wonder, like, with GTI continuing to pour into, with the United Center deal, they just don't seem to be letting off the gas, but it could just be just a brand deal to get people, like, to get some exposure last minute from this opportunity where they can do something like that, at least for now,
or
maybe
empty their shelves.
True.
Like right now it's crunch time to empty those shelves because
sell them at concerts, get it out.
How much flour they got to turn the process and then concentrate and all that shit. Who knows? Because there will be a time where it's like, okay, it's not profitable no more. But and that sucks. I don't wish that upon any of these people. Like, it's always about the farmers, anyways. Like, it's first the farmer took a chance to say I'm hemp, and then.
I'll say in the case of Illinois, I knew a good handful of farmers. I'll give them a shout out. Sun Drenched Farms, North Coast Adams is another farm, and this one's not from Illinois, but it's Cantrip. They've got the 50 I like the 50 milligram soda, but they've got lighter doses. But Adam's come on this show and he's gone on the Dales Report, and they've specifically asked him that question you asked about, like, knowing the grower and like where are you getting your THC. Just everything I've discussed with him, like, I feel confident in purchasing because there's a QR code on each product that you can scan that takes you to the test results for this product. But like you said, back to your original point, I had to weed through and find, like, trustworthy people.
Yeah. You know what they should do though? Once November hits, for Illinois at least, right? They should embrace the hemp Illinois market. They shouldn't, if they're making drinks, they should.
I was going to say, by the way, that thing is not a new experience. Weeding through people, like I did the same thing when I've gone to Michigan or in Illinois. To your point of bringing in more people, it's like. You'd still have, like, with more people coming in, it's not like everything would be sunshine, rainbows and butterflies. Like, you'd still have to, like, find the brands that are worth, you got to look for your Coca-Cola, if you will.
Yeah, no, but yeah, for sure. But what I'm saying is for the Illinois state, though, there's so much wrong with the state law besides just the separation of medical and adult use stores. But to protect the hemp farmer, right? Isn't that what you've been kind of advocating for the hemp people in Illinois? Right, which is essentially you're advocating for the THC people, right? You want people just to
I just want to be able to buy more weed from people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they should let those people sell their drinks or whatever in my store. You know what I mean? Like that would save their asses for the most part too. The good players.
Yeah,
they meet the growers.
Oh, are you seeing this Brandon Krieger comments? It says
to sell cannabis and meet the growers.
I'll read it for listeners. Miggy, you always say you want to sell cannabis and meet the growers. Go into the grows. That was possible under hemp law, but not under the marijuana laws.
Well, I mean, that's depending on. So, like, I can tour grows here in our adult use market, but coming down to the hemp market, you have to track down, like you said, you have to track down the good players, right? How long did it take you to find state players? I know Tom says like isolate's not coming from China or whatever, but there is those markets in there in Africa. Like, I don't think it's all American.
I mean, Yeah, look, like the way I look at it is it wasn't a new experience for me because like before it was legal, like I had to find like a trustworthy source too. Yeah, like that. And so I look at it like the same, almost like in the same vein, where it's like, except now you have the concept of QR codes, which is cool because you can ask people like, do you have a COA, for
Yeah.
this? But I've seen wax COAs too, so it's like you just really have to develop street smarts, I guess, for lack of better words.
Well, and to Brandon Krieger's point, what I'm trying to advocate for is the protection of the Illinois grower, right? Because the weed market is going to be 50 individual markets no matter what, right? Unfortunately, because everybody was promoting that THCA, Zaza, diamonds, spray terps, whatever it is, the fun police came and they really crunched down. This is why we need that federal parity for the THC. I mean, essentially, isn't that what we like? Isn't that what you want? So, but what I'm saying is for the Illinois growers, because they're already creating these hemp grows, they're marijuana already, but they're just high CBD, CBG probably, right? CBNs, well, not THC. My point.
I mean, I knew some that were definitely THC.
But it still should be an option though for them to be able to put their product in the state market already, because they're already licensed through the state. They just got to know if they're making it for consumption. Because I know there might be some making it for industrial use. Like those ones don't have to worry about shit. They're making T-shirts or whatever.
Right.
Concrete.
And I do know some of those. Some. It's
Nice.
a small amount, but I know some of them.
Yeah.
There's this one guy. Yeah. Anyways.
But I think that's what Illinois should do. Like now with this crunching down to the hemp industry, right? And I think the farmers themselves have been looking at it wrong as far as protecting the hemp thing. They should be saying, hey, make us fucking THC or cannabis, your adult use market. Because, I mean, unfortunately, they won't be able to go cross state lines now. Now you're in a condensed
well, and then
now,
to your point, the other problem is all the dumb shit you have to deal with in the cannabis market here in Illinois.
It all sucks, dude. The taxes, the security requirements, all the
security requirements. I mean, that alone kills.
But some of it's
businesses
are already necessary, right? Like here in Washington State, we get a lot of people stealing cars and crashing into buildings, breaking the barriers so they can. But Illinois, your product always has to be in the safe, right? How often do you guys hear about like crashing cars into doors and shit?
Yeah,
it's like a common occurrence out here too.
Yeah, no, you don't hear about it here,
especially summertime. But I'm just saying, there's some requirements you want to meet already, right? Even though they're expensive and pricey, you can get away with it if you didn't have that kind of licensing arrangement. But it just is what it is. I hate to be it like that, but federally we need that. That'll help establish like the overall like alcohol, where all the states, or even tobacco. I know some people grow tobacco. I don't think all tobacco is like in just Kentucky, but
yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I like to use like craft brewing as a model because I know plenty of people that like do the craft brewer. I think last time you were live, we were talking about the guy that I know that literally is like grows the hops and then does the whole fucking process. To use this opportunity though to plug, I did an episode recently with a craft grower here in Illinois. So he also has dispensaries. They're not opened yet, but craft grower. Tom probably knows him. His name is Dan. So he's part of the Craft Growers Association here in Illinois. And very cool story. Episode 258 for listeners that didn't see the graphic I put up on screen.
Wait, man, I'll let you go, man. I'm gonna go crash out. I've been up since 1 o'clock this morning. So
well, thank you for joining, dude. I appreciate you calling in.
Always a pleasure, man. And I'll catch you later, Genetic. See you, dude.
Yep. See ya. Well, that's cool. And it's easy to call in, but I will say that I'm about to wrap the show because we were at an hour and 53 and didn't expect to go this long, but we covered a lot of ground in this episode. It was fun to have a little chat there at the end. And curious what y'all think. If you have any thoughts you want me to address before I close out the show. I wasn't sure if we'd work through all the joints. I got one left. Technically 1.25. But we're sparking up another. Looks like we got a comment in. Satisfied Mind says, thanks as always. We need to have a pizza party. Fuck yeah, dude. What kind of pizza are we talking about? I like any kind of pizza, but like we need all the types of pizzas. Deep dish, thin crust, hand tossed. Fucking what other types of pizza are there? Is tavern style different? Tavern style? There's probably like an extensive list. Detroit style. That's another style. Yep. Thank you. Detroit style. New York style. You get the thin slices, the kind of wide slices that you fold in half. And Brandon Krieger says the thought that's in everybody's mind right now. I can't look at pizza the same after the Epstein files. God damn it. God damn it, Brandon. We're talking about good old fashioned, enjoyable, guilt-free pizza. No evil involved pizza. Tavern is damn good. Yes. That's like it's like if for folks that don't know, Tavern is like the really thin crust. Genetic Memory Farm says Tavern for the win. Here's a question about Tavern. Are they square slices? They're square slices, right? Tavern, I feel like with Tavern style, am I saying something? Am I being controversial by suggesting that Tavern style is sliced in squares? That's the question for the night. Yes, I am being controversial. All right. Cancel me. I'm joking. I think that they agree. Yeah, square cut. Square cut. Yes, absolutely. Anyway, absolutely yes to the pizza party. We'll have to invite. It'll be an open invite. And yes, beer one hand, pizza in the other. Yes. Beer in one hand, pizza in the other. Pizza in the other. In the other. Square on the taverns. Beer and pizza. I think we've got something going. And then of course, because we'll probably have to step outside for this, cannabis. You know what I'm saying? You have your pizza. Well, so we go in, we place the order for the pizza. We go out, we smoke weed. We come back. There's breadsticks, there's pizza, there's beer. Yeah, the food comes out after we've had a beer and a breadstick or two. Pizza time. Pizza, then you go smoke more weed. And then you there's got to be pool tables, cards, some stuff like that. I don't even know where I'm talking about, but this is going to be jumping, folks. This is going to be jumping. Yeah, we need to infuse it somehow. That'd be cool. That'd be cool. Somebody needs to have like cannabis infused, like fucking, I don't know. I was thinking like cheese you could sprinkle on, but I don't know how that would work. I don't know. Good ideas. Good ideas from the chat, though. Definitely good ideas from the chat. All right, folks. Well, I hope you're having a great night. And because this outro is probably going to be taken down for copyright, I will Hi, honey. Hot honey with THC. I love it. I'll let you know that this is by Jay Wick. The song is called Pork Chop Sandwich, and I love it. So, folks, I hope you have a good night. Thank you for tuning in to the Cole Memo. Cheers. I hope you're smoking on good stuff. We're live every Tuesday, 7:15 p.m. You can tune into the next show. It's up. The link's up on the YouTube channel now. You can also go to colememo.com/live to tune in. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Take care. Peace.
The plug said he getting shit in from Cali, so he paying shipping and handling. I talked to some people, they told me you probably could blow, you just need a little management. Boy, I don't give a fuck about the industry, I find a plug and get rich off of cannabis. I don't give a fuck about the industry, I work a job as long as my son's straight. Bitch, I been him with this music since bro used to cook me a beat on the lunch tray. I hate when they act throw it off, that boy wanna crash in his head down a one way. But I'm from that dirt ass south for real, we'll set that bitch off on a Monday. But we'll set that bitch off on a Wednesday. Shit, I told my dog that he more like a brother to me, but